The first 1,500 Marine raiders were volunteers selected in early 1942 for a mission type the Corps had never formally attempted: amphibious raids behind Japanese lines, inserted by submarine and rubber boat, expected to strike and withdraw before the garrison could respond. Every item in their kit was selected against a single constraint: it had to cross open water at night in a rubber boat without sinking it. The Thompson's iconic 50-round drum magazine weighed 2.3 kilograms. Raiders dumped it before every operation. The knife they carried was based on a design developed for the Shanghai Municipal Police, specifically for silent killing at close range. At Makin Island in August 1942, a radio failure during extraction left 7 raiders behind. They were captured and executed. In 1944, the Marine Corps disbanded every raider unit. The paperwork explaining why still exists. The drum was the obvious choice. The ocean crossing was the reason raiders didn't take it. Quartermaster records from the 1st Raider Battalion list the Thompson M1928A1 as the primary weapon for Makin Island operations. The Thompson weighed 4.9 kilograms unloaded. It fired the .45 ACP cartridge at between 700 and 800 rounds per minute. 2 magazine configurations were available: a 50-round drum and a 20-round box. Before every operation, raiders loaded the box. The drum weighed 2.3 kilograms loaded. That figure mattered on a rubber boat crossing in open ocean at night, where 11 men paddling against a current could feel the difference between adequate freeboard and a swamped hull. After-action reports from the 1st Raider Battalion confirmed the preference in writing. The 20-round box was the operational standard. The drum was not carried. At the engagement ranges, raiders planned to fight at closed jungle terrain, 50 yards or less. The Thompson's .45 ACP stopping power compensated for the reduced magazine capacity. A round that stopped a man when it hit him, delivered at 700 to 800 per minute, did not require 50 rounds continuous. The 20-round box was sufficient. The 2.3 kilograms saved per man was not negotiable. Raider Sergeant Victor Magakian, who served with the 1st Battalion through both Makin and Guadalcanal, recalled that no man he knew ever questioned the drum decision. The weight was the answer. Everything else in the kit followed the same logic. The kit was designed for a specific operation. August 17, 1942, tested whether the design held. The Raider's stiletto had a 6.75-inch double-edged blade and a design origin that traced directly to the Shanghai Municipal Police. William Fairbairn and Eric Sykes had developed the original pattern in the 1930s for officers who needed to kill men quickly and quietly in close quarters. British commandos carried a variant. Marine raiders carried one too, for the same documented reason. Silent killing was not an implied mission requirement for amphibious raids. It was a written one. A garrison sentry who called out before he went down could end the operation before it reached its objective. The stiletto was the answer to that specific operational problem. Raider Corporal Dean Winters, who participated in the Makin raid, later described the stiletto as the only item in his kit that had one use and one use only. It was not for rations, it was not for rope. The stiletto weighed less than a standard fighting knife. Every gram the kit saved on the crossing was a gram available for ammunition on the beach. The rubber boat constraint shaped the blade as clearly as it shaped the choice of magazine. The stiletto told you exactly what the raiders were designed to do. Makin Island told you how that design performed when the plan held, and Makin almost didn't hold from the first minute. The mission achieved its stated objectives. The extraction did not, and the reason was sitting in every raider's kit, working exactly as designed, in conditions it had never been designed for. August 17, 1942. USS Argonaut and USS Nautilus surface off Makin Island in the Gilbert Chain. 222 raiders transfer to rubber boats in the dark. The outboard motors are mounted and running. In the surf, most of them fail. The motors that failed were not a secondary system. They were the extraction plan. The surf at Makin generated swells that swamped the motors on contact. Raiders switched to paddles. By the time the last boats reached the beach, the timeline had slipped by more than an hour. Raiders paddled to the beach by hand. Colonel Merritt Edson had built his plan around speed. The motor's failure changed the timing of everything that followed, including the extraction that would leave 7 men behind. The raid executed regardless. Japanese garrison troops on Makin numbered fewer than 300. After-action reports documented approximately 83 killed. Raiders destroyed radio equipment, fuel storage, and garrison buildings. The Thompson performed exactly as designed. High volume of fire at close range, the 20-round box doing the work the drum had been left behind to enable. 30 raiders were killed. Corporal Ben Carson, present at the beach fight, recalled the engagement as organized around sound. When the Thompson was firing, men moved forward. When it went silent for a magazine change, they found cover and waited. At Makin's engagement distances, the silence lasted seconds. The Thompson's rate of fire made seconds the relevant unit of measurement. The SCR-536 handy-talkie weighed 2.3 kilograms. Its transmission range was approximately 1 mile under ideal conditions. It was not waterproofed. Rubber boat operations in ocean surf guaranteed saltwater exposure. The two specifications existed in the same kit. During the Makin extraction, raiders attempting to coordinate across the beach in darkness found their radios inoperable. Salt water had entered the housings during the crossings. Head counts were conducted by voice in the dark, across a beach still under intermittent fire, with rubber boats scattered by the same surf that had defeated the outboard motors on insertion. When USS Argonaut and USS Nautilus submerged, 7 raiders remained on Makin. Japanese forces captured all 7. In October 1942, they were executed on the orders of Vice Admiral Koso Abe. A United States military tribunal tried Abe after Japan's surrender. He was convicted of war crimes and hanged in 1947. The case number and execution record are preserved in United States military tribunal archives. The SCR-536 had been designed for land communication. At Makin, the gap between designed function and operational environment cost 7 men their lives and produced a war crimes conviction that outlasted the unit by 3 years. The radio that failed at Makin was replaced. The doctrine that sent raiders on rubber boats was not. The kit had been packed for 24 hours. Guadalcanal was about to ask it for 2 consecutive nights against 2,500 Japanese troops on a ridge the Corps needed to hold. The M1928 haversack carried by raiders onto Guadalcanal on August 7, 1942, had been packed for a 24-hour operation. 1 day's rations, minimum personal kit, ammunition for a single raid. Guadalcanal required something The haversack was not designed to carry. Raiders on Guadalcanal were tasked not with a raid, but with holding the Lunga perimeter. Sustained defensive operations, weeks, not hours. The haversack that made operational sense for Makin became a logistics liability on an island where resupply was unreliable and the duration was open-ended. By early September 1942, Raider units were subsiding on captured Japanese rice and reduced American ration allocations. Raider Corporal Cecil Clark noted in a letter dated September 4th that his section had been on half rations for 6 days, and that several men were showing early signs of nutritional deficiency. The haversack, packed for a one-day raid, had no answer for the 6th day. It had no answer for the 7th either. Clark's letter noted that by that point, the section's ammunition count had become the more pressing concern. The rations were nearly gone, but the fighting was not. Medical records from the 1st Raider Battalion documented malaria rates exceeding 75% by the campaign's end. Average weight loss after 30 days of sustained operations reached 5 to 7 kilograms. The haversack told you what raiders were designed for. The ridge records told you what Guadalcanal required of them anyway. September 13, 1942, Japanese forces launched a night assault against a ridge on Guadalcanal, held by approximately 800 raiders under Colonel Merritt Edson. The attacking force numbered more than 2,500. The ridge was 1,000 yards long, roughly 1 raider per yard of defended ground, at night, against a force outnumbering them 3 to 1. The first assault came after midnight and was repulsed. The second came before dawn. The raiders held both. The Thompson's performance on the ridge was not the product of planning for conventional defensive combat. It was the product of terrain. The darkness and the jungle compressed the fighting to the same close range the Thompson had been selected for on a completely different type of operation. At 700 to 800 rounds per minute, it stopped infantry assaults in the dark. It had done this at Makin. It did it again across 2 consecutive nights on a ridge it had never been selected to defend. Raider. Private First Class Joseph Connolly, who held a position on the ridge's right flank through both nights, recalled that the Thompson never felt like the wrong weapon. At that range, in that darkness, there was no wrong magazine count. There was only the trigger. 59 raiders were killed. 204 were wounded. Colonel Edson was awarded the Medal of Honor. His citation credited his leadership with preventing a Japanese breakthrough that would have threatened Henderson Field. The raiders held it with a kit built for a 24-hour rubber boat raid. The kit held the ridge. The institutional argument for the raiders held it longer, but only barely. The raider patch depicted a skull and crossbones above the word Raiders, worn on the utility uniform without authorization from standard Marine Corps regulations. General Thomas Holcomb, Marine Corps Commandant through 1943, had recorded his institutional objection in correspondence dating to the Raiders' formation. In a 1943 internal memorandum, he stated that separate elite designations within the Corps created a structural contradiction the institution could not absorb without conceding that standard Marine infantry occupied a lesser category. The Raiders had priority equipment allocations. The Thompson, before standard infantry units received it. The Stiletto, not issued to any other Marine formation. Submarine insertion doctrine that belonged to them alone. The patch confirmed the distinction on the uniform. The patch was both the Raiders' identity and the institutional case against their existence. The correspondence documenting that case still exists. The order that resolved it was dated February 1st, 1944. On February 1st, 1944, the Marine Corps issued the order dissolving all 4 Raider battalions. The stated rationale was manpower. That was the official position. The internal record was more specific. General Alexander Vandegrift, who succeeded Holcomb as commandant, documented the institutional reasoning in correspondence from the period. The Raiders had constituted a separate identity within the Corps that was structurally incompatible with the Marine Corps' doctrine of universal qualification. The Thompson priority, the stiletto, the submarine insertion training, the unauthorized patch, each item was evidence of a unit that had defined itself as something other than Marine infantry. Sustaining that definition required the Corps to acknowledge a hierarchy it had built its institutional identity on denying. The men transferred to the 4th Marine Regiment and standard infantry assignments. The patch was no longer authorized. The kit was redistributed. The 7 Raiders executed at Makin were entered into post-war war crimes proceedings by name. Vice Admiral Abe's conviction in 1947 is preserved in United States military tribunal archives, alongside the names of the men whose deaths produced it. The Thompson, without its drum, the stiletto designed for silence, the radio that failed in the surf. Each item in the kit was evidence of a doctrine the Marine Corps decided it could not sustain within its own structure. The paperwork that ended the Raiders outlasted every one of them. If you can name a U.S. Special Operations unit formally dissolved by its own institution for being too elite, put it in the comments. Subscribe. This channel covers the hardware, the doctrine, and the decisions behind both.